All right, B, so I want to talk about politics.
Politics.
Yeah, and before you click off, hear me out for a second. I want to talk about politics because we are fed so much information on social media, whether it's, debates, between Charlie Kirk and some college kids on campus, or someone who's on the left side, debating and arguing about whatever it is. And we're fed a lot of information, and very easily you can look in the comment section and be swayed one way or another. If you see enough people agreeing with whatever the video is about or disagreeing with whatever the video is about, then you kind of end up leaning that way. Mm-hmm. And I don't think enough people are testing their own belief system. It's like group thinking.
Yeah, herd mentality.
Exactly. So how do you combat that in an era where everything is about information? There's just so much of it.
Well, so we live in a time where herd mentality is actually easier to be a part of, because if you have a few YouTube channels or Instagram accounts that you're a big fan of, you find yourself being in a echo chamber, in a silo, and you're like, man, everybody thinks this way, and so I guess I should think this way. And so it's a beautiful thing what the algorithm does for social media, because if you're an entrepreneur, right, business owner, you're trying to grow a brand, then it's going to find more people just like you to subscribe to your channel. But if you're like, man, I like this creator and that thought leader and that person, soon it's going to be like, hey, you should listen to more people like them. Mm-hmm. And so it starts sending you more information of people who think just like them, instead of people that might have a different perspective, a different view. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I've taught my kids, the thing that I teach people who are younger than me, and they're like, man, so-and-so says this, and so I'm going to do this. I'm like, wait a minute, but what do you want? So if you stop and think about, like, what do I want out of life? And that's what people have stopped doing. They stopped thinking for themselves and researching for themselves, and they've almost outsourced their thinking to others. The big politicians know that, which is why they start paying celebrities and musicians and artists to start endorsing them, right? Mm-hmm. Athletes, mm-hmm. because they go, well, if you like LeBron, if you like this athlete, if you like that musician, you like that actor, they're going to be able to influence you. Yeah, but that actor has a very different lifestyle, very different income stream. They don't mind paying all these obscene amounts of taxes. Right. Like, if you vote for their candidate, you're probably going to end up paying more taxes, or you're going to end up being okay with the border being open, when in reality you might stop and think and go, you know what? Actually, I don't want the border open, and here's why, and I don't want to have to pay more taxes, and here's why. I want to be able to make the decisions with my money, instead of having more of my money go to the government and them sending that to Ukraine or Israel or whatever. So at the end of the day, the algorithms work against us when we're trying to make a decision. So you have to say, stop, and what's good for my family, what's good for me, what's good for my future, and what's good for my country. And if you could literally stop and make a list and go, this is how I would like my family to live, me to live, my community and my country, and then do a little bit of research, which doesn't take much, mm-hmm. on YouTube, Google, social media platforms, you might be able to come up with an informed decision and probably vote against the person that you thought you should be voting for, just because you gathered enough information and you become a free thinker.
Right. Where do you get your confirmation that something is true or not? Because again, that could be another thing where people are on social media and they see something where it looks legit, editing is getting better, AI is getting better, and AI, as far as watching people say things, it's still not as good. Like, you can kind of tell sometimes it's kind of wonky when they have someone like saying something. So maybe not necessarily that, but there are a lot of things that do look great, it looks legit, and right. You believe it, and enough people in the comments believe it, and then you're just going along with it. So how do you confirm for yourself that something is legit or not? So
it's kind of hard to do, right? But since we're talking about politics, I guess we should start at the very top. I would start it with debates. At the end of the day, and I'm not saying, because look, I mean, there was Kamala right there, the first debate with Donald Trump. Right. She's like, we do not have any American soldiers deployed anywhere in combat or war zones in the world. And then there's a video going around right now where there's some military dudes in a tent in a combat zone outside of our country going, well, where the fuck are we then, right? So they do straight up lie to you. Right. So you also have to go not only see what that politician, that individual person, whether it's Kamala or Trump, what are they saying, but who are they representing? The Democratic Party or the Republican Party? Mm-hmm. What do they want? Do a little research on your own. And you might not just check Google, because Google is probably going to serve up stuff that has been designed to persuade you in a certain way, because Google has made it very clear that they are left leaning. And this isn't about left or right. This is about me doing the actual research. So you might go to a search engine like DuckDuckGo and do your own research and go, all right, if I dig a little bit, and it's worth it. Like, you're like, yeah, but there's people already who have done the research. Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, Joe Rogan is suing, was it MSNBC or NBC, because they took some clips.
The camera clip.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
It's crazy.
They took some clips and pieced it together out of context and made it seem like Joe Rogan is endorsing Kamala Harris.
Yeah, when he wasn't even talking about her at all.
Not at all.
It's crazy.
And so he's suing him. So if you're like, man, I'm a Joe Rogan fan, I think he's pretty level-headed. I think he's a pretty good dude. I think he kind of roots for the average guy and for the middle-class family. Shit, he's endorsing Kamala. Let me do that. So go ahead and actually do the research on the individual yourself, on the party that they represent. And then when you do that, make your own decision. And that's the best way, because otherwise captions, videos, athletes, celebrities, they're all bought and massaged, tweaked.
Right.
Narratives are changed. AI now doesn't help that factor at all. And before you know it, you're actually voting in the enemy.
Right.
And doing something that's counterintuitive for you.
The last part on this is I kind of want to, so we obviously started off by talking politically, but this obviously can transfer into just normal everyday life.
Yeah.
Right. Not, living with herd mentality and just following the crowd. How have you dealt with that, number one? Because coming from Armenian culture, really any culture really that's very tight knit, you can be very easily just kind of go with what they want, go into the career that they like, because that's just what we do, right? The whole thing. So how did you combat that? And how can basically people take what you just explained for politically, they can apply that just in their everyday life?
Yeah. Well, that's funny, because Armenians, very similar to African Americans, have always voted left. Democrats.
Right.
Right. And so when I exercise my voice and I'm like, you know what? Actually, in this particular case, I'm right leaning, and I'm actually more like middle of the road. But in this particular case between Kamala and Trump, I'm voting Trump. And I would highly encourage others to do their own research and figure out why they should consider voting for Trump. But again, in every other area of my life, again, I do the free thinking. Tony Robbins once said in a DVD set that I bought 15, 20 years ago, probably more like 22 years ago, in this DVD set from Tony Robbins, he said, watch what everybody else is doing and do the opposite, and you'll be rich. It was about money mastery, his money mastery DVDs. And I actually used that philosophy in 2008 when the housing market crashed. Unemployment rate was like 11, 12%. Businesses were going under. Yeah. People were abandoning their homes, right? Because they bought a home for, let's say, $600,000. Now their house is worth like $350,000, and they're like, man, I'm upside down on my payments. And so everyone else was contracting, spending less. And I was like, is this a good time for me to start Fit Body Bootcamp? Because unemployment rate is high, businesses are shutting down. Who the hell is going to buy a fitness franchise? But I was like, you know what? I bet you there's less people advertising on Facebook right now because everyone was pulling back their money. So my cost of leads were cheaper. So I got more leads for less dollars for Fit Body Bootcamp franchise. Because a lot of businesses were going out of business, landlords were willing to negotiate better deals with us. Back in 2010, 11, 12, even 2013, they were giving us 3, 4, 5, 6 months of rent abatement, meaning free rent to open up a Fit Body Bootcamp in their location, right? Because there was such a surplus of storefronts. So leads were cheaper. Getting employees to build the whole infrastructure here was cheaper. Getting locations to our franchisees to open up and get free rent and TI, tenant improvement. The landlords were like, dude, we'll give you 6 months of free rent. We'll build out the location how you want it. Just sign a 3 or 5 year lease.
Let's just do this, please.
So there's a great example of me doing the opposite of what the herd was doing in a non-political environment to now have created a 9-figure business out of Fit Body Bootcamp. I've used that in every area of my life, which is a lesson that I give credit to Tony Robbins. See what everyone else is doing and do the opposite, because fear and uncertainty does create the herd mentality. And look at what happened during the pandemic in 2020, right? Everyone started freaking out, where people were like, man, if you walk into a grocery store
with
no mask on, You were like the Antichrist.
Right.
And you're like, look, lady, like, I remember walking into a Starbucks in Hollywood because I was speaking at one of Dan Fleischman's event. So I reluctantly drove up to Hollywood from Orange County here. Drove to Hollywood, which is a very, very liberal city. And I didn't have a mask, and so I put my shirt over my nose, walked in to order a grande cold brew with 1 pump of classic syrup, right? And some almond milk. That gives me about 50 calories. And they're like, you got to get out. You got to get out. I'm like, look, just give me my coffee. Like the time that we're spending yelling at each other and talking right now, if you would have just given me my fucking coffee, I'd be out of here. Right. And so you don't have a mask. You got to get out. And now we see like all that stuff was bullshit anyway. Right. But the herd was just like, let's shut down businesses. Let's maintain 6 feet. And then Fauci comes out and says that 6 feet distancing thing was just completely arbitrary anyway. The herd mentality. I mean, look at what Hitler did with the Jews. So many people knew in Germany what was going on, and they turned a blind eye to it because, again, the herd mentality, right? The herd mentality has done more destruction to people's lives, their quality of life, their income, their freedoms. So if we use the herd mentality to vote a president in, instead of doing a little bit of research, deciding what we want for ourselves, our families, our communities, and our country, doing maybe a couple hours of research is all it takes to make an informed decision. Like you could literally save this country. You could literally save your quality of life.
Right. I lied. One more thing on that. Because we're talking so much about the emphasis on the herd mentality, and because it's like it's a plague everywhere, not even just in the nation. I want to pinpoint this because maybe if we pinpoint it, we can help more people. What is it about the herd mentality that you think makes it so enticing and that people are, you know, it's like irresistible to them? They just have to go with the crowd.
The biggest thing that attracts people to the herd mentality is that they don't have to make a decision themselves. Number one, people hate making decisions. Everybody is indecisive. So if you could be somewhat of a decent leader and make a decision, if you can be decisive in a world of indecisive people, you will be successful. Number one. Number two, people feel safer in a herd. Think about when you look at, you know, National Geographic TV, right? And all the fucking antelope are running. They're in a herd and there's a lion hiding somewhere and it's gonna attack one of them. Now, if one fucking antelope was walking by this lion, that one antelope is about to get attacked.
It's over.
But if there's a herd of antelope running and there's one lion, well, odds are the rest of us are going to survive.
Can't catch all of us.
Can't catch all of us. So the herd mentality, it's a false sense of security, and it allows you to delegate decision-making to someone else. And most of the time, that someone else who's making the decision is making the decision that's best for them, not you.